media too. Okay, so I tried to be a bit more formal in my definitions of what I mean by interpretation. And of course, in the process, I've started renaming everything because being formal always has that impact. Screen, let's shift this. I don't know if you can, let me actually create space because I can't read it. And make it bigger maybe for you folks. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. So starting as usual with the Pearson semiotic triangle, though really I don't care that much about the referent because a lot of concepts / topic have don't have a real life referent.
Could you quickly reintroduce the triangle for the new one?
Yeah, absolutely. The semiotic triangle is about a symbol, a signifier, also aka signifier, that is standing for an external object, I would say optionally, and is interpreted as the idea of that object. The idea, concept, interpretant, signified, those are all equivalent terms, live in the brain of both the emitter and the receptor of the symbol. There's a communication situation, emitter, receptor. There's hope that the interpretants are equivalent in both the emitter and receptor's brain. Both, of course, it can be many receptors. I will refer to statements sometimes to mean the act of creating the symbol. But there's this union between these three things, something possibly out there. And if you're a Platonician, it's all out there. The concept in the brain and the symbol that is the core of the communication act. The symbol, we often think of the symbol as linguistic. They don't absolutely have to be. Symbols include notably but not exclusively runs of text in a document, word, sentence, paragraph, run of speech in media, diagrams. Diagrams a symbol. It has meaning. It evokes something that can be talked about and thought about. And really, something that can be thought or talked about is what a topic means. And it is possible that I'm using here topic and concept interchangeably, but it's possible that there are ineffable concepts, that is, concepts that cannot be talked about or thought about. But here I'm restricting myself to effable topics, effable concepts, that is, topics. I shouldn't probably make that clearer in the text. Topics include notably entities, entity reference, including either individuals or abstract classes. Predicate schemas, I guess abstract classes are unary predicate schemas, but, you know, for example, an action schema, giving is an abstract schema. John gave the ball to Jill is an instance of it's an instantiated schema. It's probably a claim. A claim is probably a more or less fully bound predicate schema, and parts of the predicate schema that are not bound are then probably explicitly unbound. Jack gave something to Jill. We don't know it's a ball. That's still a claim. It's just that there's an existential quantifier saying something. We don't know what it is. And arguments, which are claims about relationship between premise and conclusions, which are a form of predicates, applied predicate schema, instantiated predicate schema. So it's a claim. Those I did not define formally yet, but I just want to say those are all topics. They're all effable concepts. Effable meaning can be expressed in language. I was saying interpretation
Mark,
is between,
can I ask a
yeah,
question? I just want to make
yeah,
sure I'm following the semiotic triangle correctly. So there's the referent, which is some physical thing about which we're trying to talk. Like I found a diagram online of a cat.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
there's a symbol, which is like something that I guess a group of people share to know to talk about the cat, like the cat's name Jojo. So that, like a name like
Or just
Jojo
the characters CAT.
Okay, yeah, right, our characters CAT. Okay, and then the topic, that's like the concept in people's heads about a cat, or what, how does the topic relate
Yeah,
to the thing and the symbol?
it's exactly that. It's when I say CAT, when I say the word cat, let's not think of its written form, let's think of the spoken form, but they're both symbols, right? Spoken or written. The word cat will evoke the idea of a cat in your head. And you'll think of actual cats in the real world, if such exist. If I say unicorn, you'll think of non-existing unicorns in the real world. So that's what I mean by the object need not exist. But the idea of unicorn is in your head. And hopefully, my idea of a cat is close enough to your idea of a cat that what we think about, the concepts, are more or less interchangeable. I hope that the word cat evokes this kind of the same idea in your brain than it does in mine when I say the word cat. There's two concepts, what it evokes in my brain, what it evokes in your brain, and hopefully they're close enough.
And in the case of the unicorn, so is there an object or a referent in the case of the unicorn, considering that unicorns don't exist, or what is considered to be the object or the referent in that situation?
I'm a bit rusty on what Pierce has to say about this. What I would say is there's no object unless you're a Platonician, and then, you know, the Platonic unicorn exists, but I'm not a Platonician. So object is optional in my mind.
Yeah, I guess it also begs the question, like, how do you even convey these things? Always through symbols. So the referent is like this ideal of a material world that we can observe outside of ourselves, or something along those lines. If you want to get very philosophical, because the only way to talk about the referent is through symbols. So if the unicorn example is really good in that sense.
Yeah, all we have is symbols, all we have, and we create a concept in our mind through symbol exchange. And that's true of a lot of symbols. A lot of symbols exist in our mind because we've been exchanging symbols, and we've built this, as a mathematician, I'll say, equivalence class of all these way we can describe the idea of a unicorn. And that's created a picture in our mind that, and including drawings, right?
But yeah, so that clarifies symbol and topic, but referent for me is still unclear then what the point is, but maybe
well,
maybe we don't need to all understand referent. I think when you're trying to create a broader context of where these definitions come from.
Yes, and referent I won't speak about again. Basically, you can forget about it. It's useful to, exactly, it's rooted in Pierce, and I should reread Pierce actually, but really what I care is the symbol concept, or symbol, yeah, the symbol concept, aka topic. And again, topic, strictly speaking, is the subset of affable concepts, but that means they're all those that can be found in a semiotic triangle, because if it's not affable, it doesn't have a symbol, so it's not part of the semiotic relationship. So I'm mostly interested in one edge of the semiotic triangle, the topic referent relation.
I mean, the symbol.
The topic symbol, topic symbol, the topic symbol relation. That's really the relation I'm talking about. At some point, I'm calling it mental interpretation. You know, it's how do I interpret the symbol as something in my brain, which is not what I spoke about when I said interpretation 2 days ago. But I'm calling this mental interpretation, this relationship, this act of translating a symbol into a concept.
Now, Mark, Antoine, a couple of comments. I think this prose could be, you could pull out of it bullet point definitions.
Yes, yes. I said you weren't there. Oh yeah, you were there. I said I'm not done making this as formal as I want. Yes, but I agree.
Because I think that could provide value, a quick lookup of definition.
Yes.
And then what I find myself wondering while you describe these things, this provides, again, sort of a broader context for your reasoning behind all these definitions. I think for most of us, a topic and a symbol is not very interesting for everybody unless it's a claim. So I think these definitions are good. And I think you're getting to that, but just when it comes down to, and the reason I mention it is eventually, I think it'll be helpful for this group to have a set of definitions that we decide are working definitions for the concepts that we're trying to discuss.
Yep. It is the aim here, but it's always been my contention that restricting our attention to claims as the starting point actually creates more confusion than it solves, because it's good to understand how claims and entities are both concepts / topics.
I think one of our challenges is you've gone very, very deep into some of these concepts, to the point where you recognize that for everyone to be kind of on the same page, we all have to go very deep into these concepts. But then I think that's the same for all of us, right? We've all come across similar tuitions from different angles.
Yep.
And for everybody to totally have kind of come to the same mental model, we kind of have to know what everybody else knows, which is sort of impossible. And I'm not necessarily sure what the solution for that dilemma is.
Okay, you came here recently. We've had 2 years, seriously, of me presenting this at the beginning, and then, oh, let's talk about claims, and we talk about claims for 2 years, and then it's like, you know what, we actually need to go back to this. I'm a bit sick of not meeting this head on, because not meeting this head on, we meet it later on. That's my position.
You keep saying that, but the only one that keeps introducing this.
That's true. That's true. That's true. But it's also, that's okay. Fair enough.
I do like the idea of a concept and even an ineffable concept that we're pointing to with all these phrases and stuff. So now, Marc-Antoine, I think you've used topic in other ways, unless you always meant that, and maybe I didn't understand it. But anyways, so Stephen, I'm kind of leaning more towards this.
But
I don't mind these. I don't mind these abstractions, but they're broader. The thing is, if we're gonna use topic and symbol, it means that we're talking about these things in a very high level abstraction. The reason Marc-Antoine wants these is because he wants an infrastructure on a very high abstract level that doesn't just only store claims. But a lot of us are simply interested with an MVP that can store claims. Then why refer to claims as a symbol and a topic if we're actually talking about something more specific? To talk about the concepts we've been talking about in many meetings before, why use the ambiguous term if we actually all have a very more specific term in mind, which is, yes, it shares the same common abstraction, but it still is different, right? It's more specific at the same time.
These are just the basics Marc-Antoine wants to introduce. He wanted to go into interpretation. That's something.
Yes,
we need for
but
claims.
that's still, and I understand. I'm on board with these two.
Stephen,
except referent, I don't see the use of. But
I'll tell you one thing. It's like 2 days ago, you told me this was confusing because I used a specific version of this with claims. That the reason you were confused was that I was using the specific instead of the generic. Now I'm using the generic. Decide, but
there's a time and place for both. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
so
and today is my day, so today
is
the day of the generic.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's actually background. That's actually background that the others don't have. Fridays we try to do more of a, we call it bottom up or top down. I don't know, like a more theoretical approach, more fundamental approach, and then Tuesdays with Timothy we try to do more like top down from actual use cases.
Bottom up.
But yeah, I never know which one is which.
From
So
concrete
yeah,
examples.
that is
yeah.
true.
Yeah, yeah, but the other thing is this is relevant to the question of distinguishing claims, and we'll get to that. I mean, this is just the beginning of the conversation. It's like asking, why is that relevant before I'm done? And you see, I keep introducing it, yes, and I keep introducing why it's relevant, but I cannot do it without introducing the background. I did try to go fast, but Carl very rightly asked, okay, let's go slowly over this, and that's legit. We need to do that. Okay, so this edge of the triangle between topic and symbol, I'm calling it the mental interpretation. That's actually not correct because, well, I'm still fishing for terms. This is what happens in the mind of the receptor, right? The receptor interprets the symbol. The emitter, quote unquote, transcribes their topic as a symbol. So that's not interpretation, that's expression. So there's whichever direction you traverse that edge, you're first expressing and then interpreting. So I guess, let me write that, rest expression emitter. Now, I'll make that better, but I've captured the term. Normally, the act leverages the symbol's context, i.e. the conversation or document and community in which the action of emitting the symbol originally happened. And here I'm using context in the original linguistic sense, the text around the statement. Or the speech around the statement, but it's also the community, the fact that, we have a linguistic community, we have a usage community, which gives certain specific community-specific meaning to certain words. There's all this context so there's the immediate context of the document or conversation, and there's the broader context of the linguistic subcommunity. That's something that happens in the brain. I don't think community, this broad context is something that will ever model in the system, but the narrow context, yes, the immediate provenance. The same symbol, word, sentence can be used in many different contexts, obviously. Let us call the tuple composed of a symbol and its provenance with the document conversation with the locator for the symbol and the provenance, the situated symbol. So I'm calling that situated symbol. We spoke of situated claim as a special case of that when the symbol represents it. aka also known as the topic instance in topic mapping. By the way, I'm referring, Carl and Jonathan, to topic mapping is a whole discipline that predates the semantic web, was kind of abandoned, but it had a lot of these intuitions right. It started as an index back of the book, and then they realized, no, this is about concepts. And so there's actually a split in the topic mapping community. There's the topic mapping syntax, reference syntax, which uses XML and is a bit narrow. And there's the TMRM by Durusso, I'll give the URL, which is a more abstract document, which is what I'm referring to. But it's an ISO standard, actually. The TMRM is an ISO standard.
I have a question, or rather a suggestion. Very often you introduce synonyms like situated, simple, similar, topic instance. I think it would also help if you just pick one, and then like Jonathan suggested, you have bullet points and you try to reuse consistently that one. So unless they're slightly different.
The reason I'm always, I'm trying to do that exactly. The reason I introduce synonyms, however, is to make the bridges with other communities using different terms.
Yeah, but we're yes, trying to come up with like...
Yes, here situated symbol is canonical, and here that's what I did above. Symbol, signifier is a synonym, but symbol is going to be canonical.
Okay,
Topic
gotcha.
is canonical, concept is a synonym. Though here I should make the nuance for ineffable concepts. But yes, you're absolutely right. Let's make one canonical. Here I'm saying topic is canonical, symbol is canonical, and situated symbol is going to be canonical henceforth, though I wanted to, AKA means that's a synonym, but that's not the one I am using it later, so I should be a bit more careful here. We can also join a broader interpretative context, language subculture, to the situated symbol. So here I'm using situated symbol in here's the narrow context, the provenance. Maybe that's what I should call contextual. Still unsure about that bit of terminology. But I'm not, as I said, I don't think that the broader interpretative context will be formally represented. So,
how do you delineate one from the other? I don't really understand where the definition draws a line between the broader and the immediate context.
Okay, the immediate context is okay, provenance is actually my canonical term for immediate context. That is the either document or conversation from whence it came.
Yeah, but for example, how do you delineate a conversation or a document, especially if it's like a web page with hyperlinks or a conversation that carries on and where is the beginning and end, who determines that? That's what I mean by how do you delineate it?
What is important is that I'm able to point to it and point to a locator within that thing. Now, if, for example, whether I point to, suppose there's a book online and there's a paragraph within that book that has its own URL, whether I use the book URL or the paragraph URL with, in either case, a locator saying, hey, this is the exact sentence in that book within the paragraph. This is the exact sentence in the paragraph. It should be the same. There should be equivalence between provenance locators.
Okay, so you're saying that the immediate context is the same than the situated symbol, or what did you call it?
The situated symbol is the tuple of the symbol itself and its provenance. The situated
but so you're saying the exact sentence provides the immediate context, but that is the situated symbol, no?
No, the bare sentence does not have context, right? The sentence, okay, if I say sentence 3 in this book given by this URL or by this content addressable ID, okay?
Yes.
Sentence 3 is the locator. The document is given by its identifier, whether it's a content addressable ID, URI, URL, I don't care. But there's the document identifier, the fragment identifier, and that's a terminology I'm taking from web annotation, what tells me which subpart of this document am I using, right? And then there's the sentence itself. Sentence 3 is this, or characters 5 to 7 of sentence 3, or characters 5 to 7 of paragraph 2.
So the immediate context is also formalized. So you can have the full web page, but there's one sentence in that full web page, which is a situated symbol, and then the immediate context is defined by what you're saying now, however you formalize it, however you define it. It can be a web page, it can be, and then the broader context is everything outside of that formalism.
Yeah.
Outside of, if you say a web page, and it's like all URLs maybe, or well, it depends, I guess. So it's pretty much what we choose it to be.
Yeah, the broader context is whatever your brain uses to make sense out of that sentence. That means your knowledge of the language, your language of the community where that page was posted, your knowledge of whatever knowledge your brain uses to make the interpretation.
Okay, yeah, I think I understand it, but then to me, the distinction between situated symbol and immediate context is fairly arbitrary. I can consider them almost, but I think I understand what you mean now. You could also say that you include the full web page in the situated symbol in a way.
Yeah, the situated symbol is just the couple of the sentence itself and its provenance. I just wanted a name for the couple.
How do you formalize provenance? That's why I'm hinting at.
Yeah,
formalizing provenance will require you to delineate the website, which is the same
and what
you're
I'm
calling
saying,
immediate
formalize
context.
provenance, use web annotation. That's a W3C standard.
Yeah.
I wrote down for provenance, it's whatever context your brain uses to interpret the symbol. Is that a correct summary?
No, that's not for provenance. That's not what the brain uses for. That's the broad context.
Broad context, okay.
That's the broad interpretative context.
So provenance is the immediate context.
It's this sentence was found in this document at this location.
Okay, so it's more like where you actually physically see it appear.
Yeah.
Oh, rather what you store to point to it. That's what I'm hinting at. It's what provenance is whatever you store as provenance, because
like address.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. That's a good question. Actually, do I mean the way? For me, the provenance is the document at the location, and it's represented as another symbol. The fact, when you're saying what you use to store, for me, that's more the representation of the provenance. But the provenance is the document and the location, the ID of the location. Now, the location is this.
We can go through examples. Let's take the Bible. You take one sentence out of the Bible. Is the provenance the chapter? Is the provenance the book? Is the provenance the specific version? Is the provenance the paragraph? What is a provenance?
Okay, the perfectly valid question. The provenance is you took that sentence in that edition of the Bible at a certain position on a page. That's abstract and conceptual. There's the representation of the provenance, which is this edition of the Bible probably has a DOI or an ISBN.
Can I stop you there for a second? No. The abstraction, isn't that the broader context?
No, the broader context has nothing to do with provenance. Broader context.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Because the idealized concept you just explained to me is the exact same thing as the broader context.
No, not at all. What I call broader context is everything your brain uses to arrive at a certain concept from that sentence. And that means your knowledge of English is part of the broader context. Your knowledge of anything you know about Christianity and its symbology is part of the broader context. Your whole brain's content is part of the broader context.
Yeah, so that's undelineated context, if you will.
Correct.
Once you delineate it, you call it provenance.
No, what I call the narrow context.
I'm not seeing it. I'm sorry.
What?
I'm not seeing it then. Sorry.
Okay. These are very, very distinct concepts. The broad context and the narrow context are totally different. Okay, I shouldn't have used the same word for them. The broad context is the mental interpretative context, language, culture. Okay, that's one thing. The provenance, aka narrow context, is this sentence was found here. It was found in this conversation. You know, Marc-Antoine said this.
Yeah, but my question was, so according to that definition, and my question was, you can both say this sentence was found in that paragraph of the Bible without specifying which version of the Bible. That's provenance. What is that? If I now specify, oh, it was found in that version of the Bible there, that's also provenance. So
correct.
Isn't it fully defined then by what you decided to be, like how specific you make it? What I called before as how much provenance you store.
Okay, there's provenance.
You can suppose theoretical experiment. Suppose you can store the entire context. Like you can go broader and broader. Oh, this person was living that century. Blah blah blah. That you add more and more context, and you formalize that. You add all of that in provenance. Is it then provenance?
Okay,
that's my question. Where do you delineate it?
That's an interesting question, but let me answer your first question first, because you're asking two distinct questions. The first one is there's the provenance in the abstract, and there's the representation of provenance. Obviously, the provenance can be ambiguous. Like a given representation of provenance can be ambiguous. Like I could say, Bible, this book, this paragraph, this verse, this chapter, this verse, and then you'll ask, oh, is it King James Version or the Ecumenical Version? So that's ambiguous, right? And it's possible that that specific sentence is the same in both versions. Or I could ask, oh, the Latin or the English version, right? And then it's not the same text. And then we can argue about how accurate the translation was. So there is a kind of equivalence relation there. We're really diving into not the central aspect of the conversation, but
you make a distinction. I'm asking you what the distinction is because I don't see it. If you can explain, we don't have to make the distinction, but you insist on the distinction.
I can't explain it. It's just I feel it's a garden path, but I can't do it.
May I try to say what I understood?
Sure.
What's the
I think
difference?
in general, that's probably going to be very helpful in these conversations is to have other people
Rephrasings. I approve.
playing back. Go ahead, Felix.
Yeah. So the broad context, as Marc-Antoine explained, is what you have in your brain. So it's a bit, I understood it in the semiotic triangle, a bit similar to the topic, actually. It's something that, no, it's something that doesn't exist as a symbol this way. But the provenance itself is a symbol.
Marc-Antoine's shaking his head, and I think
No.
Okay.
the broad context
Okay.
helps you get to the topic from the symbol, so that you see or hear a symbol, and then based on context, which includes narrow context and broad context, a topic is formed in your mind, and the context, all sorts of context, are in my mind. This helps me to think about it as assumptions. Based on the broader context of the English language, I assume some things about words. I assume some things about culture. And then based on the narrow context, specifically the version of the Bible where it was found, I assume some other things. Another thing that I think helps me think about things is when you're interpreting something like a phrase in the Bible, you obviously can't know what everyone that ever read that Bible was thinking when they read it. And you can't even necessarily know what the person writing the Bible was thinking when they wrote it. All you can know is what is the common knowledge among all the people, given somebody says this version of the King James Bible, this exact paragraph, this exact sentence. What are the assumptions that you can make and assume other people are making?
I'm going a bit finer than that. I think we can ask, what are the assumptions in general, this subcommunity, or even this individual? How often we'll want to do the latter, of course, is an open question, but I'm saying we can ask, how do you understand this? I mean, we do that in classrooms all the time, right? How do you interpret that sentence? But
Yeah.
other than that, everything else I agreed with. The context is, yeah, go ahead.
What the context locator or address or whatever, the very, we don't know have a name for it, but I think that's what you mean by the unambiguous.
The provenance representation, let's call it the provenance representation.
That will give to everybody who has at least the knowledge to understand the format of this representation, the same knowledge.
No, it will tell you.
There will be certain things that'll tell all of us. Like we can all.
That's important. That's important. It will tell us which Bible, which sentence. It may not give us that much information to ensure common interpretation.
Certainly
right?
not. And that's the whole rest of the problem. But at least there's a starting point that provenance representation gives us a common ground
yes.
to start with.
The thing is, if we argue about interpretation, right? Some of it will be about unshared assumption, what I call the broad context. Some of it will, but sometimes we'll be able to say, well, I think that this sentence should be interpreted as that because it wasn't this, it came from this version of the Bible in this community, and this is how this community usually uses that word, right? This is why narrow context matters, is when you can make appeal to community situated arguments.
And I don't think that's the confusion here. I mean, we all agree with that. The confusion is, at least to me, that wasn't the confusion.
Okay.
I understand that.
But the question you asked, and I never got to try to answer it, I think, and let me rephrase the question and let's make sure I got it wrong. I got it right. You're saying, in a way, there's a kind of, I'm saying there's a fundamental difference between narrow and broad context, and you're saying it's more of a continuum.
It is a continuum, and I'm saying, where do you draw the line? And my question is, where you draw the line, isn't that just what you decide to store as your provenance representation? My last question was, isn't provenance representation the same as immediate context? It's whatever you decide to represent as immediate context. And that's fairly arbitrary because it is a continuum. And you can decide to, what I called formalize before, represent as much of that immediate context as you deem relevant. Does that make it immediate context, the mere fact that you represent it?
Okay.
If so, are they synonyms?
Valid question. I don't think it's a continuum, and I see why you think it's a continuum, but I think we're talking about different things. For me, there is a continuum between, say, the Bible and its, say, interpretative community, and including more and more definitions, for example, to enrich the interpretative context progressively. Like there is a, you can draw circles of interpretative context, but I'm defining provenance much more narrowly, in the sense that I'm saying, or narrow context, I'm saying I could, in theory, hand the representation of provenance to a computer which has no understanding, no semantics, no interpretative capacity, or to an alien from a totally different culture that doesn't know English, doesn't know anything about Christianity. And I could still make a meaningful, interpretable by this hypothetical alien or computer, provenance claim. It's this sentence coming from that specific document. Here's the URL. Here's how you can fetch it.
Okay,
you can check that this sentence is indeed the one found in this location in this document.
Sure, but how is
and that's all I mean by provenance. No semantics.
But you did say representation as well there. So this you're calling is provenance representation that the computer uses.
I'm saying there's two aspects to provenance. There's the provenance in the abstract and its representation. And the point I'm making here is that there can be multiple equivalent representations for the same provenance.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay, but it doesn't answer my question.
Okay, why not?
It doesn't answer. My question was, and what did I write? Aren't provenance representation and immediate context synonyms? Because you didn't explain immediate context now. You explained provenance representation. I'm on board with that. I also want provenance.
Oh, provenance. Yeah. Provenance. I would, well, for me, immediate context is the same as provenance, not provenance representation. The synonym is provenance and immediate context.
Okay, and then immediate context representation would be the same as provenance representation.
Yeah.
Perhaps we don't use two words.
So immediate context and provenance representation are synonyms? Did I hear that correct?
No.
Or you use them differently?
No, provenance and immediate context are synonyms. Provenance representation is
immediate context representation would be
immediate context representation. Yeah.
And perhaps the definition that really matters for us is the provenance representation.
Well, the question is, what do we mean by that? That's why I'm asking these questions. Because
let me propose that provenance representation could be defined in this way. It must be a locator. It must be something where you can take that provenance representation and extract the symbol. You should be able to give me a URI. URI would be great, I think, or a URL. We should be able to adopt some standard, and the URL there's or a URI, so there could be different schemes, right? It could contain an ISBN, and maybe if there's like different editions, you know.
I think the same argument is going to hold as why I was arguing for self-contained, or what did I call it? Claims, self-standing.
Standalone claims.
Sorry?
Standalone claims.
Yeah, standalone claims. I think the requirement is that it's standalone here, the provenance representation. Sorry, Mike Antoine, what's your preferred term? The things that the computer wants to use?
I've started using standalone. I'm fine with it.
No, the thing you said before that the computer wants to use and can act on.
Provenance representation.
Yeah.
Provenance representation. So I think the same argument holds there as I've been arguing. We need standalone claims, that provenance representation needs to be standalone, immutable. It needs to be very
I agree
clear.
with that. The standalone representation is immutable and standalone, yes.
And that can be through identifiers, whatever, that point to fixed resource. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. That's the key term that we need to agree on. And I'm fine with provenance representation.
Okay, good.
So one term I haven't heard used right now about this provenance representation is a word like strategy. And like, I mean that kind of in like a computer sort of sense, as in what we're trying to do, what I think we're trying to do with a provenance representation is to convey, hey, these are the steps or the procedures, or like, this is the way I would describe getting to what I saw. I'm going to transfer it to you. And I expect then that you'll be able to follow these same steps or the same strategy to confirm the, I guess, now I don't know which term to use this, the symbol. Anyway, to confirm the same thing I thought I saw, you'll be able to see it using these steps. And so, I mean, I think of it in terms of a strategy. And like a URI is a super helpful strategy because it's so standardized. Like all of us know exactly what it means to, use a URI either in a web browser or like in some system that, retrieves it.
Yes and no, Carl, because it does bring the question, it's a web, right? It's a web. URI is connected to other URIs. So when you pointed at URI, are you only pointing to the page at that point in time, or are you pointing to the page as in any point in time?
Exactly.
So
yeah, exactly. No, well, hold on, but there's more to it, right? There's more to it that, I totally agree with what you just said. So, I mean, I think there's more to it like that. A URI is a very basic strategy, very blunt strategy, but there's more to the strategy. There's a strategy of like, should you look at a particular section on the page? Have you included the time at which you accessed it?
That's all defined in the web annotation model. It's not worth discussing. It's all being laid out perfectly.
That's one technology method. We're talking concepts now, because we also
absolutely,
want to point to segments of videos, etc.
That's absolutely correct. It's all there.
The URI model, URIs are not just URLs. The URI model can be used to identify things that aren't on the internet.
Yeah, and this is all discussed, and questions about media and questions about this is all discussed there. And both the concepts and like this is a total garden path. I mean,
does the web annotation data model have a way to handle a conversation? Like say Carl, in a private conversation with 4 other members had this conversation, this is what was said. And, transferring that representation, basically the only strategy to confirm that would be to find one or more of those participants and to ask them, hey, was this conversation held and did it occur? Is that something that's handled by the web annotation data model?
That's a perfectly valid point. And no, we'd have to add to it, but this is a pluggable data model, so it would be easy to add it to it. But that's
why I'm thinking in terms of strategy, is that like if I imagine any possible thing that I would need to refer someone to, it has to be generic. The starting point has to be generic enough. Now, like whether the actual implementation can handle it initially.
Separating technology from requirements.
That's absolutely right.
But what you are calling strategy is what people call a schema, a URI or scheme. So the URI scheme identifies the strategy that you're using.
Yeah, and the notion of distinguishing the resource, the locator or selector, they call it actually, this is all, it's conceptually well laid out in this standard. So it's easy to apply it to a new case because the concepts are well defined. This is, I don't want, like, see, I thought we'd go over this in 5 minutes. It's been a half hour. I really want to move on for something that's been perfectly defined elsewhere. I can just refer to it.
Yeah, you wanted to make a point, so yeah, let's try to
Yeah.
do that.
Okay, we can join a broader no. But I mean, there's obviously a lot that I'll be a bit more precise in the writing. That was helpful still. In the context of argument and concept mapping, we want to consider topics without reference to the provenance of each specific situated symbol. So topics are thus represented by a standalone symbol that acts as a topic proxy. Topic proxy is also a term from topic mapping, but let's use it intuitively here. We don't have access to symbols. They only exist in the brain, but we use symbols as proxies for topics.
Okay, you say we don't have access to topics, is what you mean.
Topics. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Good point. Thank you, Jonathan. The symbol is standalone, that's provenance has been erased. Oh yeah, I spoke of erasure above. Oh yeah, yeah. In the best of cases, it may include enough explicit context, so it's here context is not clear. So its mental interpretation can be as unambiguous as possible without its provenance. So that's now the standalone. Standalone here just means no provenance, provenance erased, forgotten.
Or was never there in the first place.
Yeah, sure, but I have a lot of reserves on that, in the sense that, you know, I expect a lot of us to be working on systems where, oh, we're just dealing with standalone claims, and these are all standalone claims. The reality is they all exist in the context of our system. So they all have the provenance of our system.
Yeah, I think
well,
even said that kind of convinced me is that that's true. Claims will be made in a context, you know, in one of our systems. But then if we identify those, try to identify those standalone claims, there should be a way across systems to identify the same claim.
Absolutely.
Having to basically refer to somebody else's claim and kind of thing it was originally made there.
Yeah, stripping all those elements of context and provenance, an action I call erasure yields a bare symbol, aka standalone symbol, decontextualized.
And what is the system then here that it's made in, right? Because it's what a whole network of systems that decides to share that same adoption of what it means. Just
yeah, the symbol, I guess, is a value object, and the question is, when a system speaks about a symbol, do we consider it a bare symbol, or do we consider it a situated symbol?
The point is, we're trying to agree. That's why I'm arguing for standalone claims, because that's how that's pretty much a requirement if you want to all link to that same standalone claim and build upon it.
And I agree with that.
Okay.
We need bare symbols.
So you can, in that case, you cannot say that it's made within the system, because there is no one the system. The whole the point of calling it a standalone claim is that there is no the system.
What I'm saying is, when you put a claim in one of your systems, you're creating implicitly two objects. One is the situated claim situated in the system, and one is the standalone claim. When we're sharing the claim, I think we should be specific about which one we're talking about, but both exist in the system. But the system is its own context. And of course, we want to talk about bare symbols. We want to talk about standalone symbols, I should say. I wonder, yeah, I'm liking bare more than standalone, by the way, because apartheid on terminology. For me, standalone claim is mythical. I don't believe in standalone claims. I believe in claims that attempt and tend towards being interpretable standalone.
Well,
But I
we
don't
have a
believe
good
that's
enough
ever
definition
reached.
for a standalone claim that I don't think we should reject
Yeah.
that idea.
No.
They won't exist. I think the concept is valuable. I understand realistically, whenever you're having an argument about a claim, that argument will probably happen on some website. Someone will go to a site, see the claim, and respond to that claim in that context. But I think that that's that definition that we worked to create that definition. So let's not throw away standalone.
No. I see. Okay, we want to maintain the idea of standalone claim because but I'm maybe trying to make a distinction here, and maybe I want to play with the terminology. There's the act of erasing provenance, which creates what I'm calling a bare symbol, right? Now, is this bare symbol standalone? We spoke of ambiguous standalone claims before and less ambiguous standalone claims. We have all that conversation. What I'm saying is when we erase, what we have is a bare symbol. Does it stand on its own? Maybe not, right? And
what do you mean, right?
What?
Are you saying it does or it doesn't stand on its own because it might or might not be ambiguous? Can you elaborate what you mean by that question?
Absolutely. Let's go back to our classic Paris is nice, right?
Okay.
Paris is nice in the Michelin guide. That's with provenance. It's not that ambiguous. Paris is nice, or Michelin guide of France. Let me be more specific. Paris is nice, bare, just this bare sentence, Paris is nice, set of characters. Can be interpreted, but it's ambiguous because there's many plausible interpretations. And I'll get back to that. So it's a bare standalone, it's a bare, ambiguous bare claim. And what I'm saying is we would want to paraphrase, and what I used to call interpretation, I'm now calling paraphrase. We would want to paraphrase Paris is nice, bare claim, ambiguous bare claim, into a less ambiguous, aiming towards standalone bare claim, such as the city Paris is
Marc-Antoine, I
full
think
of beautiful buildings.
Strayed from the definitions that we had from standalone claim, and I think we should stick with that definition. There's some other concept that you're trying to communicate here, but we need another definition. You're trying to define something that is both standalone and is not very ambiguous.
Or from the definition of standalone claim, we haven't say what's different about bare, because all I heard you say right now is that it might be a synonym. But if you understand and we share this lengthy discussion about what a standalone claim is, can you explain what is different about a bare claim? Let's use the specific. You agree a claim can be a symbol, right? So what is different? What's the difference between a bare claim and a standalone claim?
Okay.
In the document here, you say they're the same thing, aka standalone symbol.
Yeah. But I'm trying to play with that now. I do say it, but this document is a work in progress, and right now I'm trying to introduce a new distinction.
All right.
Okay. Bare is equivalent to what we called standalone 2 days ago.
Okay.
Let's start with that.
Marc-Antoine, honestly, it's not helpful if we change the definitions that we've agreed upon. I think.
No, I think that's wrong. I think it's not helpful if we stick to definitions when we introduce new distinctions.
When we have a new distinction, maybe we should use a new term.
Okay, then how do you propose?
So let's use standalone claim in the way that we were using it in the last conversation, and then you should introduce some new.
No, I'm proposing renaming the claims. If you have another proposal, I'll listen to it. But my proposal is standalone, as we defined it, is misleading. I'm proposing renaming that to bare, and I'm proposing reusing the term standalone for a different concept. If you're not happy with that, you're perfectly fine to propose another term.
Just call it X for now. Just call it X for now. is different about this other concept? Start from what we share right now. Standalone claim, this different thing X, what is different about it, regardless of terminology? What doesn't fit the definition that you think that we agree on or not? What's wrong with it? What falls outside of it that we need to be able to talk about, this thing X that needs a name, and then we can start talking about swapping names.
Okay.
For now, we just need to, you need to communicate what is different. Focus on that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Okay, let's do that. The way we defined standalone claim 2 days ago, there were two components. And maybe I should refer to, where's the definition again? It's in the Slack, right? Let me make sure that I'm not misquoting here.
Yeah, that Stephen's definition in Slack is before that conversation. I think our conversation clarified a lot.
Okay, so can you actually, can I ask you to restate what your understanding of the standalone claim definition was? Because I want to be sure that I respond properly to it.
So my definition is it has no context. It has no explicit context or what you're calling narrow context.
Mm-hmm.
It is it always has to be a claim. It is very close to what you think of as just the symbol, if that symbol is a claim.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we decided that it's a claim that can be talked about in different contexts. That is, different systems can talk about things like, how might you interpret the standalone claim, Paris is nice. And I think that's about it. Stephen, maybe some.
Yeah, more or less, although it doesn't include context, is that relies on definition of context. But let me try. For me, one, it's self-contained. So you all agree it's the only thing you look at to determine whether or not supporting and opposing arguments you add are relevant. So it can be ambiguous, it can be specific, but it's standalone in the sense that it's self-contained. In that sense, we didn't talk at a great length whether or not context can be contained within that, and to a degree it can, because you could maybe argue that you can have a standalone claim that is made in the Bible, and what if, well, no, I guess you're right there. We said we don't point to external sources, right? So it's self-contained in the sense that if that person from the Bible, if you embed that within the standalone claim, that's part of it, but it doesn't mean that you pull in the entire, that you have to go read the Bible to decide whether or not the underlying arguments are relevant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and for me, these are exactly two different definitions, and it's the distinction I want to make. I don't think these refer to the same context.
When you say these, which are you pointing to?
What Jonathan said and what you said just now. For me, these are two totally different concepts. For me, they evoke different concepts, and I want to introduce how they feel different for me. What I call bear is exactly what Jonathan said. We take.
Can you paraphrase it in your own words?
Yes. It's, we took a situated symbol, we strip the provenance, and then we're just left with the bare symbol, that is the symbol without any specific context, or
it sounds like what I called a piece of text in a previous meeting.
Yeah,
do you remember?
exactly.
I kept insisting on let's just call it a piece of text because that's what it is.
Yeah, okay. I'm happy to call it a piece of text. Bare symbol, piece of text, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a claim necessarily.
Not necessarily a claim. I'm speaking of bare symbol, I'm generalizing. If it happens to be interpretable as a claim, then it's a.
Okay, and your other thing is?
My other thing is what I'm calling now, and let's not look at the text too much here. My other thing is closer to what you call a standalone, sorry.
So the difference is that you're naming something I didn't name indeed. well, that thing that I call a piece of text, but
Yeah.
that for me is only relevant in the context of provenance. That's what I tried to explain last meeting. So, so yeah, I agree that distinction is necessary, but you're distinguishing because for you, symbol is both a claim and a situation. Sorry, for you, symbol is overloaded. So the reason you're distinguishing between them is because you're using very abstract terms. Symbol is both
situated or bare.
Yes, yes. Situated or bare and standalone.
Here I'm using, no, let's get to standalone is another story. Let's get to standalone.
But okay, I think I understand why you want to introduce it. But yeah, this is why overly abstract terms are confusing.
Let's start with situated versus bare, with or without provenance, simple. Now, standalone, which I think is aspirational, asymptotic, but we need that concept because we need to know what we're aiming at. It's a bare symbol, maybe even not bare, shouldn't matter, but a symbol whose meaning, who is likely to not yield very divergent interpretations, even if you take it as a bare symbol, even without context. It's a symbol whose interpretations are likely to be the same. And then I can go into defining what I mean by the same.
Wait. Is this your definition of standalone claim, which you're now going, or is this a proposed new thing? Because we never said likely to be perceived as, I was very explicit, for me, standalone claim can be as ambiguous as possible. It can be Paris is nice, super ambiguous. Are you saying that, is this your definition of standalone symbol or whatever you're aiming for? Or is this a new concept you're talking about?
I thought, the way you described standalone, I thought you meant, I heard you say that it can be interpreted without context. And I did get the impression.
Be. I never said can, I said should. The only thing that determines whether or not arguments are relevant is the claim itself, the thing you formalize. The only thing you're allowed to look at to determine whether or not arguments are relevant is the standalone stuff that you formalize. Okay, that's my definition. It's very operational.
It's okay. I thought it meant what I just said, but it's obviously we're having trouble communicating these abstract concepts, as you say, on both sides, because I misunderstood what you were saying. Okay, so I'm trying to name the fact that when we're paraphrasing Paris is nice as the city Paris has beautiful buildings, okay, for example, this we're aiming towards something that can be understood with less, that is more likely to have a single interpretation with less context.
I think that's what Timothy aims at with canonical claims. But so yeah, I agree that that thing also deserves a name, but it's subjective and it's a goal. It's
a goal, it's aspirational, but what are we aiming at?
Yeah. So that's not, to clarify, that's not at all close to what I define as standalone claim.
That's fair, that's fair. I was going to use standalone for it. And I'm open to other suggestions, by the way, but when I was using standalone, I was aiming at that definition.
So I like canonical because I think in a way that is a lot of the confusion with talks with Timothy is that's because when he mentions canonical, it's always he wants like good claims to talk about. The canonical, like let's not talk about these standalone claims that are too ambiguous. And if either way, we can decide on two terms. I'm actually pretty much open to anything as long as we
we can say minimally ambiguous. How's that for now?
Still subjective. It's like so the definition includes a subjective evaluation. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'll get to that. Yes.
So we can look at the same standalone claim. One person can say it is X, and the other can say it's not X.
Yeah, because we're aiming at standalone. Yes, absolutely.
So let's include it in the definition, and then it's okay. But then the reason this is important is because if you're building the system, it also means there is no such representation without a person attached to that X. You cannot store a canonical claim in a canonical claim database without attaching people that have done that interpretation to it. That's why I store standalone claims.
Okay, 1 second, let's get into that. I'm saying minimally ambiguous is aspirational. I don't expect to ever have a flag saying this claim, this bare claim, is by its nature minimally ambiguous. It may be minimally ambiguous so far in our efforts of disambiguation by its relational properties, but it's not a status, it's not something the claim is intrinsically, it's something the claim is in the state of the disambiguation process so far. Okay, so ambiguity is a relational, and it's relation, and in that sense, it's about people may disagree, meaning we are in the process of disambiguating. Disambiguating is a process, it's done by people, and that way it's subjective. And we can say, we're at this point, this sentence seems to be considered least ambiguous by the community so far. And that way it's a subjective evaluation.
Yeah, but you see, you're pulling in a lot of other processes. So if we're ever going to,
I'm going,
all of these other things, and you're going to,
I do want to define all this. Yeah. I do want to define all this. Absolutely.
Okay, but then I agree. So that's a useful definition to have.
Okay, so
which is separate from.
Need to go.
Yeah.
See you, Felix.
See you.
I'm also pretty soon gonna have a drink. I think it's Friday here.
Yeah, we're not even halfway. Oh dear.
But it doesn't help, Marc-Antoine, to just like go over this and presume that we're all on the same page. So it's okay to go slow, and especially.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
But it does beg the question that Jonathan introduced originally. You're introducing all of this because you have a certain end goal in mind, right?
Totally.
So is all of this relevant to that end goal?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I had two requests that I think would be helpful for me in this meeting. Is one, if this text could have been shared beforehand, I think could have had more focused, maybe, conversation about it. And two, if you led with it, I apologize because I missed it. Like, what is the end goal we're getting to? Because that would have helped me keep in mind, okay, like what should I be focusing my questions or conversation on?
But both are valid criticism. I'm sorry, I was still working on this text until now. I'm late, as I started saying when I arrived. Apologies for that. Perfectly valid criticism. And that's why also the text is prose and less systematic than I would want it to be. As for what's the end goal, that's a perfectly valid question as well. I'm trying to define what is the operation of distinguishing concepts and claims and making them identifiable. I was out.
Can you clarify a bit on this? Like what?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Timothy recently said, like, I think the big part of the discussion is what determines identity. So you're very interested in understanding figuring identity of something. Yeah. Is that of topic? Is that of symbol? Is that of something you haven't presented here yet? Because I think what you're trying to identify might be a better starting point to explain.
Okay, we are trying to identify topics, but we don't have access to them because they only exist in the brain. So we identify them through symbols. And so the question is, how can we pinpoint concepts through relations between symbols?
So you want everyone to somewhat formalize topics through necessarily symbols?
Necessarily.
And that's what you call topic proxies, in order to then match topic proxies against one another to then give likelihoods that the symbols that are used, in a way, topic proxies are symbols, right?
Yes, topics proxies are symbols. Yeah.
So you want to use symbols that people then what, I guess if you want to see whether they mean the same thing, that will again involve some type of evaluation from people on those symbols. It's not the symbols by themselves, because otherwise, because a topic So you want people to
What I was
say
saying,
this topic is this collection of symbols, and then you want to see whether or not other people evaluate that collection of symbols similarly, which means that they have a shared topic, most likely.
exactly, a
along
shared
those lines?
understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to see if people have the same idea, and see, it's about clearing misunderstandings, right? People use words haphazardly, and that means they think they're saying the same thing because they're using the same words, but they actually mean different things. And it's about being able to pinpoint when that happens, and being able to pinpoint when that happens requires analyzing the relationship between words and meanings, or symbols and topics. And that's what I'm trying to do.
That happens during these conversations a lot.
Yep.
Interesting to do some, once we've defined our terminology, to map some of these conversations back.
Absolutely.
I think, Marc-Antoine, part of your broader goal is to, in order to create a mutual understanding, is to take this mental model in your mind and make sure that we all understand it. And that is that's of course a big, potentially a big challenge, right? There's a lot of ideas, and I think you feel like unless everybody in this group fully understands all of those ideas, they're not gonna we're not going to come to an understanding that's usually correct. And that it sounds like that's likely true. I think it's important to keep in mind that like I said before, we all have these big mental models, and you know, we're essentially we've agreed to start with your mental model, which is, you know,
On Fridays.
It's Friday, and when it's saying a lot, right? Where we've kind of that means that we are having conversations in terms of what's in your brain,
Right.
and so, and that's kind of makes sense because you've got to have a set of terminology that everyone agrees on in order to make progress. But it's also important to keep in mind that there's a lot of mental load that you're asking from everyone in this group.
Yes.
Every time, and for you, it's very easy because you understand all these things. And
Communication
so
is hard.
I think, but I think sometimes there can be shortcuts, you know, that can reduce that mental load. And I'm not necessarily sure what those are because I don't understand what's in your mind. But I think, and the reason I mentioned this before and I mentioned it again because I don't know how long this is going to take. You know, it seems like to totally map out what's in your mind and get everyone in this group to share your mental model and your definitions. I don't know if that's going to take another 2 years or what, and I don't know if there's progress that can be made in the meantime. I want to put that out there to ask if there are shortcuts. And I'm not saying that this wasn't useful, but I think it's still, because I think we defined some more terms, and every time we define terms, you know, that we agree on and clear concepts, that's great. But I think it's still worth asking if there are some shortcuts to getting at the essence of, you know, the common domain model we're trying to build.
I'll be very honest. I can't believe this conversation lasted the time it did. In the sense, we didn't get through what I saw as the introductory definitions. In French, we say we were stumbling on the flowers on the carpet. We were very focused on details of what I saw as preliminary concepts, which should have been waved away as these are details, let's look at the main statement. And we didn't get to the main statement. Now that said, so I think, yes, I need to explain better. I don't think I don't think I did a good job of explaining it, by the way. But I think also, I would request a bit more hand waving. This is some of this is tentative, which means that asking for details can be premature, and makes the thing slower and more painful than it should be.
Mhm.
I think a shortcut is going to the essence and not going to the.
Yep, I see what you're saying. I think that makes sense. Sometimes I think
But,
you're right.
but sometimes it's necessary for clarity, and maybe it was worth spending all this time.
Well, I think it was a productive conversation. I think if you think that that some of the details can be skipped, I think we should probably defer to you, and you should say, why don't we leave that as fuzzy for now and go on? I think that makes a lot of sense. Another idea I had maybe to make these conversations for shortcuts, some one-on-one conversations, because this is sort of an N squared situation, and it may
Correct.
be that 3 out of 4 people in the room understand things one way and one person understands it in a different way, but we never know if that's the case, and I do think that sometimes, like, calibrating and refining your understanding with just one person can be
There, I agree totally.
that sometimes.
That could be a huge gain. Yes. Fair enough. And by the way, I mean, I do accept responsibility. I mean, this was, as I said, I did not get as far as I wanted. There's still things unclear. There's still things I'm working on. But yeah, I was going to get to I even made a drawing. still very imperfect, but I'm working on this, making this clearer. What are the parts? What are the...
Carl, thanks for these notes. I think that these are also very valuable.
Yeah, please feel free to contribute. I think you were in there, and feel free to tighten them up. But
no, there's notes. Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, sorry, I shared it at the beginning, but yeah, feel free to.
Oh God, I missed it. I missed it. That would have been useful, actually. Yeah.
Definition of standalone claim that I wrote. I think Steve is editing it, which is good, because now we can refer to this contextualized topic, this list of bullet points in this document.
Where is this in? Is it in Hangouts?
I can put it into Slack. I just
but
shared
the URL opens this, and my Slack is not in this.
My notes were shared at the very beginning. I'll put it into. Do you need it in Slack, or where can you see it? Can you look at the chat for Zoom?
I did it in Slack because this opens the browser, and I never use Slack in the browser. Yes, I could.
Okay, thanks for today. I'm heading out. See you on Tuesday. Hopefully Timothy will be around. Haven't seen him in ages.
Yeah, he was there yesterday, actually.
All right, see you guys. Bye.
Okay, see you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mark. That was Marc-Antoine. That was very interesting, and I personally find the group conversation super helpful because I lack all this context. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, see you soon.
Yeah, take care.
And yeah, I hope we can continue this. I think I'm really onto something.
I see the connection between what you're saying and what other people are saying, and the thoughts that I myself had been having separately, and like I see it all connecting. But yeah, it is a lot of work to take different brains who have been processing and who have their own context and to bring them together. Yeah, but it's also kind of exciting. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.